Welcome back to Karma, Destiny and Choice. Today we will be looking at the law of karma from a fresh perspective. The subject is entitled Buying into the Lie. Sister Denise, welcome back. Hello to you.
Thank you so much, Magla. Hello.
So, buying into the lie. A very interesting topic. The first thing that comes to mind is that in almost every country across the world, children are raised listening to fairy tales of happily ever after and someone significant coming back to save someone else, and miraculous interventions, etc. This is not true, and we call it fairy tales. And yet there are many who buy into this fairy tale.
The thing is this, when something like these fairy tales persists for a long period of time, it means there is some truth in it, but people don't know what that truth is, so they interpret it in a way that is not true. And this is because truth, essential truth, is handed down, it is said, from the ancestors in the form of symbolism. People are not able to distinguish whether something is being described in terms of symbols or whether it's an actual description. I'll give you an interesting example. In the ancient Indian scriptures, they describe a gigantic world war. Ancient knowledge is handed down sometimes as a real description, which people take as symbolic, and sometimes symbolic, which people take as real. And so it gets all mixed up in translation, as it were. So the story about these ancient weapons is that they were considered to be the wild imagination of the ancients until they experimented with nuclear bombs and found that they corresponded exactly to those descriptions. And so that made their hair stand on end, because they realized that on some level people knew about this kind of weapon in prehistoric times. So that made people really worried. There are stories, these creation stories. They exist all over the world in all the cultures, and they're only slightly different one from the other. They talk about a huge flood. They talk about gigantic destruction. And the scientific community is talking about extinctions. And they say, well, all the dinosaurs got extinct on the same day. There are these prehistoric memories of something really cataclysmic that took place, and then you can also see it in the geological record. So there's some scientists, particularly Emanuel Velikovsky, who made a correlation between the ancient stories, much more ancient than Sleeping Beauty and Cinderella, which are modern ones, but a correlation that these legends are handed down, and they do hold memories of something that happened long ago, that happens periodically. There is something about a story or an idea or a strange belief that won't go away, that indicates that it's true. So in India it is said that you can tell if something is true if it can't be destroyed. You may have experienced something like this in the court system, that if somebody is not telling the truth, they change their story all the time. And if somebody is telling the truth, they never change it. This is how you can know. These stories then become the way in which you teach people or train people in moral stories, and then you can bend them to suit whatever kind of ideas or propaganda you want, and it all gets very corrupted, but it's difficult to untangle. If you want to tell something that's not true, and you tell it in a way similar to something that is true, you get people to think it's true because it follows the same pattern.
Given that there's so much of dishonesty in the world, why is it that we so readily believe something that's not true, even though something in you says, this is just a story? Why do we believe it? Why do we buy into it? Why do we tell it to our nearest and dearest?
I think one side is if it's plausible, then you think it's likely. One of the problems that happens is when children get very badly violated and they speak about it, the elders will say, this is not possible, therefore it must be a lie. And then that child has no option but to keep quiet and hold their trauma in themselves, which will burst out in all forms of psychosis. So this is a very big problem in the way people relate to lies and truth. They just want it to suit their existing criteria, and they're very limited, very closed about this. People think that if it's pleasant, it's true, and if it's unpleasant, it's untrue. If it rocks the boat, it's untrue. If it maintains the status quo, it's true. So they want to maintain the status quo at any cost, and they will sort of manipulate lies and truth in order to suit what they want. So the powers of discrimination, the willingness to work with the reality of truth is not there. And it is said the first casualty of war is truth.
When we believe something that's not true, and when a person is confronted with the evidence of what is true, why is it that people find that so hard to believe? Why is it better to believe the lie than evidence of the truth?
Maybe they want to stay in a comfort zone, and if they have to face the truth, then they have to come out of their comfort zone. They go into, they have to face things they don't want to face, you know.
I'm thinking of the phenomena of betrayal. When someone gets divorced, and as a result of finding out that their partner of 20 or 30 years has been cheating on them, it's quite common to hear the so-called innocent party in that marriage saying, my entire married life was a lie. And when someone is betrayed, say academically, when you thought that this professor was the author of this paper, and then realize at a later stage, no, but he plagiarized the entire thing, then your entire relationship with that person is a lie. I think that is one of the most awful feelings one can have, because you base your relationship on others on trust, and then it's a house of cards that comes crumbling down. When somebody is betrayed, when somebody realizes this aspect of my life has been a lie, or this aspect of my life has been a total fabrication. I read an article last year that these home DNA tests have become all the rage, and people are buying them, for example, for Christmas, so that the entire family can get tested, only to find out that your mother is not actually your mother, or your father is the father of two of the children in the family and not the other two. There are instances where the parents knew about this all along and just chose not to tell the children. There are so many examples of one's life being a lie. What makes us blind to the truth? And once things do blow up in your face, when you've been betrayed and when things erupt as a lie, how do you deal with it?
I think when it's a matter of relationship, if the other one is betraying you, and you don't detect it in 20 years, that means you're not able to read vibrations.
What? Whoa, hold on. Pause. What does it mean to read vibrations? What is that?
When someone is true, the vibrations are, you can say, I suppose you could use the word authentic. They are what they present they are. And if they're not, then there'll be some dissonance in the vibration in your relationship with that person. When you see that person, there'll be something wrong. And if you can detect that, you'll know that they're not right. But if you can't, then you're easily betrayed. So it's a matter of how sensitive you are.
How does one fine-tune that skill? I am surprised to hear your answer, because what you said is not general knowledge, not common knowledge. And secondly, I don't know if people know how to fine-tune that skill.
There are quite a lot of people who do. There are always signs, indications. Something will happen that will let you know. Because if you're genuine and the other one isn't, there's a dissonance, and something will happen. Like I've heard stories of somebody was having an affair with somebody and they left their, or it turned on their mobile phone, which went right to the wife, so the wife heard everything on the phone, and found out that way. So there will be some quirk of the drama which will give you a sign, and you can either choose to ignore the sign or doubt the sign or follow the sign. But in all the instances that I've been connected with, when someone is not genuine, there's always been signs. And I think when you see a sign, you look for a confirming sign, 2 or 3 signs, because you may say, well, this may or may not be a sign, but if you get 2 or 3 or 4, it's pretty well confirmed, then you know it's for real. Then you have to decide if you want to confront the person or not. That's up to you. When you're in close relationship with someone, you observe them, everything they do. And if somebody makes a slip and then they cover it, you'll see, oh, they made a slip, they covered it. Okay, so their level of genuineness, you see, you give them the benefit of the doubt, 100%, okay, not 90%, okay, not 80%, and then your respect for that person reduces. And that can happen if you're in a non-dependent relationship. When you're in a dependent relationship, it's very common to ignore the signs, because if you see the signs as they are, you have to take responsibility for looking after yourself, taking care of your situation. But if you're dependent, then you may artificially blind yourself.
You just covered close relationships. So there are also other relationships that one has with one's pastor, priest, or guru. I'm thinking of that category. Or a teacher. It could be that that person is not as they appear to be. We live in a world where not all is as it appears to be. How does one protect oneself from the dishonest?
Well, it's really more a matter of detecting, because it's up to you to detect it. And I think if you have somebody who's in a very high position that you highly regard and highly respect, you're going to scrutinize them very closely, because you do not want to be betrayed. You give a very large amount of trust to them, so you also scrutinize them. If not, you should. Any little sign that things are not right, accumulate those signs until you have some evidence, that says this is incontrovertible. And your respect for the person comes down, which means you don't trust them anymore.
It's quite common when you encounter someone with any type of title, religious or scholastic, judicial, or any type of title. One tends to believe the title and assume the person is their title.
Yeah.
The honest version of their title. We dare not to think, I wonder if this one's a bit dodgy. We're more inclined to think, hey, This one is a police officer. He must be an honest man.
Yeah, but I think, there's been so many people who've been shown up to be not, that it's pretty less common to get influenced by somebody's title. Somebody may have a big title, but you still look at them with microscope.
Okay, so you are saying scrutinize and assess.
Yeah, because a title doesn't prove or disprove your character.
A title does not prove or disprove your character.
There is just so much evidence that this is the case, that, in the old days, 50, 60 years ago when I was young, if you wanted to get a passport, you would get your form, your application form, countersigned by a respectable person, doctor, lawyer, etc., until there were too many stories that showed that the profession does not assume or presume, you cannot presume that they're respectable. They got rid of that system. You sign your own form. Nowadays, how do you know whether somebody is honest? External things are so dodgy that you cannot go by that. You have to go by your nose,
Okay, so we've spoken about other people, but let's now talk about oneself. How does one switch on the light inside? Look into your own belief system or your entire inner world and assess whether my beliefs, my practices, my attitudes, who do I trust, who do I don't trust, how do I make an inventory and assess whether where I stand contains dishonesty or not.
This depends on your relationship with your conscience, because your conscience will let you know right away, provided you have a good relationship with it. But people who disregard their conscience, why would they do that anyway? Because they're dishonest.
I want to know, how does one do right by oneself?
You listen to the voice of conscience. If you are not in good standing with your conscience, you're in trouble, because you have to ask somebody else and they may or may not lie to you.
Sister Denise, I want to interject here. You have individuals who are raised by individuals. I have a friend who says that in the culture in which she was born, the feeling of guilt comes along with mother's milk. Everyone within that community has an over-exaggerated feeling of guilt. If I do not help my sister, I feel guilty. If I do not do that, I'm guilty. If I breathe in too much of air, I'm guilty. So they have what I call an overburdened conscience.
That's not conscience, it's like brainwashing. And your conscience is not going to be part of the brainwashing process. It always remains detached.
Yeah, many have been indoctrinated.
Yeah, that's the word, indoctrination.
So one pulls oneself out of that. How exactly? How do you unlearn all of that nonsense?
Your conscience will tell you all the time, hey, hey, hey. It will not let up. If you disregard it, you can't do anything. But if you give importance to your conscience, nothing can get through that. No amount of indoctrination. You will always suspect, even if people are using hypnosis, and there is a very advanced system to get people to be assassins, and this was used with the system of hypnotizing the person to do that thing and then killing them after they do it, so that, but they always, they suspect that somebody's using them.
You spoke earlier a lot about honesty and what a vital virtue it is. How do I ensure that there are no lies that I'm buying into in my current relationships, and that I'm not carrying any burdens of lies, which we just established as indoctrination, from my own past, that's contaminating my life as it is?
Yeah.
How do I not buy into those lies?
I think that the way that they are injected or indoctrinated is with trauma. Your conscience is your intellect, so if something is done to you at a very, very young age, it'll go right through that and in. So this is why it is said in religion, if you want to indoctrinate someone, you have to do it before the age of 7, because once they're 7, they can detect it. The intellect is there saying, wait a minute. But younger than that, it goes right in, because the child has no defense of this system of conscience is not in place. It can be in place younger, but average 7. I am wondering if honesty is a virtue, and I'm thinking it's not a virtue.
What is it then?
I'm thinking it's a policy.
That's a fresh take. Do tell. What do you mean?
Well, when I think of virtues, I think of something that comes from feelings, like generosity, sweetness, kindness, this kind of thing. Honesty, I would say the virtues come more from the mind, from the heart. Honesty is from the intellect. It's to do with calculation. It's to do with recognition, resonance, this type of thing. It's using a different part of consciousness. And so this is why I'm questioning whether the word virtue is right. You know, there's an expression that is used. It's part of the misogynistic patriarchal culture, where a man will say to a woman who he thinks is in love with him, I will make an honest woman of you.
Yeah.
And that is utterly disgusting. And it assumes that if a woman loves somebody without somebody telling her that she should or shouldn't or what, then she is deciding for herself, and that is not allowed because she's a possession of a male, whether it's her father, her husband, or her son. And this is, I think, why the word honesty is given this tack of a virtue. And it's a complete misuse of the word honesty. When you detect some funny business, you have to challenge it. And there's a great deal of manipulation. You see, even the use of language is a manipulation to gain power over somebody, make a person doubt their integrity, and so on. So to me, honesty is a policy, a calculation. So why do we buy into the lie? Because of, in childhood, this is where the fairy tales come in. In childhood, you are primed to be lied to. Where is grandma? She's gone on holiday. She's dead. You don't want to tell the child. Oh, when is she coming back? Oh, well, actually, she's dead. Why didn't you tell me in the first place? Oh, well, you thought it would upset you. Well, you've upset me good and proper by lying to me. Tell me the truth. This is how adults lie to children.
Right, I think we'll say goodbye to you right here. Yes, on that note. It is a very unpleasant feeling to know that one is being lied to, and it is an equally unpleasant feeling to know that one's life has been a lie. So Sister Denise has shared tools on how to ensure that within every sphere of your life, both internally and externally, your life is an honest one. And I like her fresh definition of honesty, that it's a policy, it's a way of being. Very nice, very nice. So thank you for your time, and we will see you again soon. Cheers.